On January 6, 2025, while the sports world was fixated on chaos, NFL coaches fired, franchises rebooted, networks scrambling for breaking news, something else slipped through unnoticed. At noon on a Monday, with offices open and football dominating every screen, a new professional basketball league quietly tipped off its second season. Empty seats, minimal buzz, almost no attention. How does a league launch into invisibility? And what happens when the spotlight never finds it? Then came the moment that changed everything. The league's president publicly admitted they might need the WNBA to survive. Not speculation, not spin, a signal.
President of the WNBA Players Association, she negotiated a new collective bargaining agreement contended.
Because when confidence turns into contingency, a clock starts ticking. This is the story of Unrivaled, its ambition, its missteps, and why the next few months may decide whether it becomes a pillar of women's basketball or a cautionary tale written in real time. The launch and the promise. To understand how Unrivaled reached this breaking point, you have to rewind to the launch. Because on paper, this league started with legitimate momentum, the kind of momentum that attracts serious money and serious attention. Unrivaled secured a Series B investment that valued the league at roughly $340 million.
The WNBA has raised $75 million from investors, which includes the likes of...
That is not casual funding. That is not angel investor money from sports enthusiasts hoping to build something interesting. That is serious venture capital betting on massive future growth, betting on exponential returns, betting on a vision that would transform how women's basketball operates during the offseason. The positioning was smart and the pitch was simple. Become the premier offseason destination for elite women's basketball players. Miami location, high production value, short seasons that do not wear down bodies. Six-figure paydays for a couple months of work. The value proposition for players seemed obvious.
Just how much Caitlin Clark and her fellow professional women's basketball players were set to make compared to their men in the NBA.
Play 3-on-3 basketball, stay sharp, make real money without traveling overseas. Keep your body fresh for the WNBA season. Come back ready to compete rather than exhausted from months of international play. Credibility came built into the foundation. Nafisa Collier and Breanna Stewart, two of the biggest and most respected names in women's basketball, co-founded the league. That mattered enormously. They brought legitimacy that money cannot buy. They brought trust from fellow players. They brought attention from media and fans who follow their every move. The early buzz felt real, the investment felt justified, the future felt bright. But a problem became obvious almost immediately, and it was not something that marketing could fix, that production value could mask, or that Miami sunshine could distract from. Basketball players want to play basketball. Real basketball. 5-on-5, full court, with the rhythm and spacing and chemistry that defines the sport they have dedicated their lives to mastering. 3-on-3, no matter how well produced, no matter how lucrative, still feels like an alternative. It feels like a modified version of the game designed for television pacing and smaller venues rather than athletic excellence and competitive fulfillment. That distinction might seem subtle from the outside. But for elite athletes who have spent decades perfecting their craft within a specific framework, it is everything. The star power problem. The biggest star in women's basketball made the problem impossible to ignore without ever saying Unrivaled's name. Caitlin Clark passed on the league entirely, and she didn't do it quietly.
This shot put Caitlin Clark into the history books. She stands alone as the all-time scorer.
She explained openly and clearly that her game doesn't fit 3-on-3 basketball. Clark's value is built on vision, spacing, and playmaking across a full court. Her ability to stretch defenses, create in transition, and elevate teammates disappears when the game is compressed into a half-court format. She understood that immediately, and she chose to protect her edge rather than force herself into a system that neutralizes what makes her special. For a league built on star-driven attention, that decision matters. When your valuation depends on eyeballs following specific players, a public opt-out from the most influential athlete in the sport isn't a marketing problem, It's a structural one. No amount of branding can replace a product that your biggest draw fundamentally doesn't want to participate in. And Clark wasn't alone. Aja Wilson, the face of the Las Vegas Aces and one of the most dominant players in the world, didn't join.
I was hot. I don't think y'all understand how I felt after that game. That was just...
Angel Reese, whose rivalry with Clark drove massive engagement across the WNBA, stayed away.
Two superstar rookie WNBA players who some claim are behind one of the fastest turnarounds in sports league history.
Sabrina Ionescu, one of the league's most marketable crossover stars, was absent too. Unrivaled entered its second season without the 5 most recognizable names in women's basketball. The players casual fans actually know. The athletes who generate headlines simply by showing up. That absence cuts deeper when you look at the numbers. Unrivaled reportedly generated around $27 million in revenue in its inaugural season, while carrying a valuation north of $300 million. That gap only works if growth accelerates quickly. Venture capital doesn't reward patience, it demands momentum. Flat lines are fatal. So the question becomes unavoidable. How do you project exponential growth when your biggest stars are resting, rejecting your format, or committing to something else entirely? Because at that point, the issue isn't timing, it's whether the foundation itself can hold. The Project B threat that brings us to the real threat, the shadow looming over every decision Unrivaled makes from this point forward. Project B. Project B is a rumored 5-on-5 traveling women's basketball league scheduled to launch by this time next year. It has not announced a broadcast partner. It has not released a schedule. It has not tipped off a single game. It exists, as of now, primarily as a concept on paper and a series of conversations happening behind closed doors. And yet, it is already reshaping the entire landscape. That alone should tell you how serious the situation has become. Despite being nothing more than a vision and a promise, Project B has reportedly secured commitments from established stars. Alyssa Thomas and Jewel Lloyd, both of whom are currently participating in Unrivaled's second season.
How's it feel back?
Feels
Season
good.
2.
Feels good. I mean, same team, different team, different players, but excited to be back, ready to get going.
Have publicly aligned themselves with a league that does not yet exist. Read that again. Players who are currently playing for Unrivaled, who are cashing checks from Unrivaled, who are appearing in Unrivaled broadcasts and promotional materials, have already committed their futures to a competing product that has not even launched. That is not normal industry behavior. That is not leverage being used in contract negotiations. That is not posturing for better terms. That is a warning sign flashing in bright red letters. This is not competition in the traditional sense where two products fight for market share while both remain viable. This is an exodus in progress. When players are willing to attach their names to a future product instead of doubling down on the one paying them right now, it signals a fundamental loss of confidence that no marketing campaign can repair, that no salary increase can fix, that no Miami location or high production value can overcome. When your own players publicly commit to a rival league that has not even launched, you are no longer fighting for market share. You are fighting for survival. And that distinction matters because survival forces decisions that strength never would. The 5-on-5 Advantage Project. B has one advantage that Unrivaled simply cannot replicate, no matter how much money they raise or how many adjustments they make. It is built around 5-on-5 full-court basketball. No modified rules, no condensed format, no compromises designed to fit smaller venues or tighter television windows. It is the game players grew up playing, the game they mastered in high school and college and professionally, the game fans instinctively understand without needing explanations or rule adjustments. For elite athletes, that matters more than paychecks or production value. 5-on-5 allows for rhythm, spacing, chemistry, and legacy. It allows players to showcase the full range of their abilities. It allows for the kind of competitive basketball that builds reputations and cements legacies. 3-on-3, no matter how well executed, still feels like an exhibition. It feels like a showcase rather than a proving ground. It feels like something adjacent to basketball rather than basketball itself. Project B is selling the real thing. They are offering players an opportunity to compete in the format they prefer, in the game they love, with the spacing and teamwork and strategy that defines elite basketball. Unrivaled is selling a modification, an alternative, a different product entirely, and in a market where both options are available, where players can choose between formats, where the financial packages might eventually become comparable, the 5-on-5 product will win every single time. That is not a marketing failure. That is not a leadership failure. That is a fundamental product mismatch that cannot be fixed without becoming a completely different league. The distress signal. Now pay close attention to what Unrivaled president Alex Bazell actually said.
The Collier, Alex Bazell, and Luke Cooper, to all of our staff who have been tremendous.
Because language like this is rarely accidental at the executive level. Speaking to Front Office Sports, he stated that he did not want to speak too much to what was going on behind the scenes, but he had made it very clear they were open to the ecosystem, whatever that looked like for them. Nothing was off the table. Parse that language carefully. Open to the ecosystem, whatever that looks like. Nothing off the table. That is not the language of a league negotiating from strength. That is not confidence. That is not ambition. That is openness, bordering on vulnerability, flexibility, bordering on desperation. Nothing is off the table is what executives say when they need options, not when they control them. It is what leaders say when the path forward is unclear and they are willing to accept outcomes they never would have considered 6 months earlier. Bazell even referenced NBA Europe as an example, pointing to historical cases where leagues survived by aligning themselves with larger ecosystems rather than standing alone. That comparison is telling. He is not talking about expansion. He is not talking about growth. He is talking about preservation. He is talking about survival through integration rather than success through independence. From a business standpoint, this signals a pivot from ambition to damage control. Unrivaled is no longer positioning itself as the future of women's basketball. It is positioning itself as a potential piece of someone else's future, hoping to remain relevant by becoming useful to a larger entity rather than competing with it. And once a league starts talking like that publicly, once that language enters the media coverage, the rest of the market notices. Players notice the shift in tone. Investors notice the uncertainty. Partners notice the hedging. Potential sponsors notice the vulnerability. At that point, the conversation is no longer about growth. It is about how much runway remains before the next decision becomes unavoidable. The WNBA factor. What makes this situation especially complicated is the history between these two entities. Unrivaled approached the WNBA early in its development and pitched a formal partnership.
Portland's new WNBA team and is renewing its partnership with the Portland Thorns. Thorns will feature Alaska Airlines on the back of their kits.
They wanted to be part of the ecosystem from the beginning, to have the official blessing and structural support of the established league. The WNBA declined. At the time, that decision made sense from the WNBA's perspective. Why would the established league help build a competing off-season product that could siphon player energy, attract media attention away from WNBA-related content, and potentially create complications around player availability and fatigue? Why validate a startup that might eventually become a headache? But now the landscape has shifted significantly. The WNBA is negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement.
Away from the expiration of the WNBA's collective bargaining agreement, and tensions are running high.
And there is serious discussion around exclusivity clauses that would limit or outright prevent players from participating in outside leagues during the offseason. Those clauses are not currently enforceable under the existing CBA. The league is still at least one agreement away from being able to pay salaries that justify demanding exclusivity. But the trajectory is clear. It is coming. The day will arrive when WNBA contracts include provisions that restrict off-season play, that give the league control over where and how their players compete year-round. That reality leaves Unrivaled in an impossible position with shrinking options on every side. They cannot compete with Project B on the product itself. 5-on-5 will always be more attractive to players than 3-on-3 when given the choice. They cannot secure the biggest stars because those stars are either resting, protecting their bodies for the WNBA season, or waiting to see which opportunity offers the best long-term upside before committing. And looming over all of it is the possibility that off-season leagues could become contractually restricted altogether. that the WNBA could simply close the door on outside competition entirely. That is existential. That is a threat that makes every other challenge look manageable by comparison. The integration question. So what is the only realistic path forward? Integration. Becoming part of the WNBA ecosystem rather than competing with it. A sanctioned developmental league, a minor league style system, a formal off-season partner with roster rules and salary exceptions. These become the key phrases to watch in the coming months. That is what nothing is off the table really means in practice. It is not bold experimentation. It is not innovative thinking about the future of basketball.
The WNBA and the WNBPA have officially agreed to a 30-day extension.
It is survival language. It means Unrivaled is willing to accept almost any structure, almost any limitation, almost any rebranding that keeps the lights on and preserves relevance in some form. The question becomes whether the WNBA has any incentive to accept that offer. They already declined once. They watched Unrivaled launch independently, struggle to attract the biggest stars, face competition from Project B, and now come back with hat in hand, asking for partnership on whatever terms the WNBA wants to set. That is a fundamentally different negotiating position than the one Unrivaled had during its initial pitch. Now consider the optics surrounding that season opener.
Screen by Gabby, freeing her up. Floats it up off the glass. Tough shot with the right hand, running to the left.
Because optics matter as much as numbers when a league is trying to establish credibility and momentum. There were visible empty seats in a venue that barely holds just over 1,000 people. This was not a cavernous arena where gaps could be hidden in upper decks or corner sections. Every open chair stood out. Every empty space was noticeable on camera. Social media engagement failed to break through the noise of Black Monday and WWE Raw on Netflix. The buzz that once felt new and energetic during the inaugural season was noticeably muted, noticeably quieter, noticeably less urgent. The brutal reality of front office sports opened its coverage of the season with a line that should unsettle every investor involved. The novelty of Unrivaled's inaugural season is gone. For a league that has completed just 1 year of existence,
Dumping it into her fellow rookie, and Kiki Eries, there are 3 of them.
that assessment is devastating. Novelty was never meant to be the destination. It was supposed to be the runway. The temporary excitement that buys time while an audience forms, rivalries emerge, and habits are built. Once that cushion disappears, patience disappears with it. Every game becomes a referendum. Every dip looks systemic. There is no grace period anymore. That context makes Unrivaled's second season launch even more telling. A noon Monday tip-off directly against NFL Black Monday chaos and a major wrestling anniversary was not a growth play. It was a survival maneuver. The priority wasn't attention, it was obligation. Getting games on True TV, satisfying partners, and hoping the numbers didn't force uncomfortable follow-up questions. When a league starts managing optics instead of momentum, it signals internal pressure. Zoom out further and the pattern sharpens. Unrivaled positioned itself as the premier off-season destination,
Edwards, nice pass to the outlet passer. Jab step 3 in the air is money.
yet built its product around a 3-on-3 format that many of the sport's biggest stars actively avoid. It secured enormous investment on projections that now look increasingly fragile. It leaned into an intimate arena experience, then struggled to fill a venue barely holding 1,000 fans. Even the celebration of adding 150 seats felt less like growth and more like justification. These aren't isolated missteps or bad luck. They point to a deeper disconnect with the market. Players want to play full basketball, 5-on-5, with space, rhythm, and continuity. Fans want to watch the stars they already follow playing the game they recognize. Right now, Unrivaled offers neither the preferred format nor the necessary star power. And that reality is forcing conversations that can't be solved with marketing tweaks or schedule changes. This is about whether the product itself needs to change or whether time is already running out. What happens next? So what happens next? That becomes the central question that everyone in women's basketball is watching closely. Do WNBA executives engage with Unrivaled's overtures?
Carter trying from deep and hitting. Look out if Kennedy Carter adds that distance to her game.
And bring the league into the official ecosystem as a sanctioned off-season option? Does that partnership make sense for the WNBA? Or does it create more complications than benefits? Does Project B launch successfully and render Unrivaled irrelevant almost overnight? Does the 5-on-5 format prove so much more attractive that players abandon the 3-on-3 product entirely? Or does Unrivaled somehow find a way to survive independently as a 3-on-3 league, despite losing the star power war, despite empty seats, despite leadership admitting vulnerability on the record? The next few months will answer those questions definitively. Watch how the WNBA responds behind closed doors to partnership discussions. Watch where players choose to commit their futures and their energy. Watch whether Unrivaled even makes it to a third season without a fundamental restructuring of its model, its format, or its ownership. Watch the language that comes from leadership and whether it continues to signal survival mode or somehow shifts back toward confidence and growth.
For a final shot. Griner, though, going to lay it in off the delivery from Thomas.
Right now, Unrivaled isn't fighting for dominance. It's fighting for oxygen, empty seats in a room that should feel full. Star players choosing distance over loyalty. Leadership language shifting from vision to survival. In this league, the pressure isn't theoretical. It's visible, measurable, and accelerating. Because in professional sports, the moment urgency replaces confidence, the power dynamic changes and decisions get made fast, quietly, and without mercy. The next 12 months won't decide who wins the offseason. They'll decide who's still standing when the dust settles. And as new players move into position and old alliances begin to crack, one question hangs in the air. When the final move is made, will Unrivaled be remembered as a disruptor that reshaped the game, or the warning every future league wished it had studied sooner?